What's up, guys? ClutchFanatic37 here, bringing you an ECD Hero Mesh overview and review. We're going to do a three-part video to kind of talk about three different areas. So, first off, I'm just going to go over the presentation and whatnot because I guess that makes a huge deal to people. Me, personally, I could care less. So anyway, ECD Hero Mesh is their newest performance mesh. I'm assuming when you get it from retailers or buy it from them, it will come in this nifty little box. Says Hero Mesh Be Elite, has a picture of their mesh, powered by Gymalax, which I'll talk about in a second because it threw me off. And these four icons, pretty self-explanatory. I mean, that's a raindrop, so it's probably weatherproof. That's looks like, you know, the weave of a diamond, so maybe something that has to do with the weave. Then you got a feather, which obviously means it's going to be super heavy. And then you got, looks like a lacrosse with a ball moving up and down, which could be, you know, since it's a semi-soft mesh, it shifts around a bit to kind of act as the player's pocket would. Then you go to the back, and believe it or not, they have all those things on there. So I think that's pretty cool. Someone like me who pretty much knows what's going on, I'm sure many of you do as well with performance mesh, don't necessarily need that, but pretty cool selling point. Kids are going to freak out. I actually am kind of nerdy whenever I see mesh, you know, like in a box, I get kind of excited. But basically, you open the box, and guess what you find? Another plastic encasing. I think this is super genius by them. So it says feel the difference on both the sides. You open it up, and there you go. Your mesh will be in there. Mine is on the table, but then on the back it just says Hero Mesh. You know, when the game is on the line, will you be the hero? Super cheesy, but at the same time super cool. It'd be a huge selling point for kids. So there's that. And then they came out with hero strings, which also kind of confused me because, you know, it's got the three icons up here, and the first one is the raindrop, meaning it's weatherproof. This really confused me because I don't understand how you can make a cotton shooting string weatherproof, let alone sidewall strings. But we're going to try these out. We're going to give a full review. I'm assuming that, you know, since they do say it's weatherproof, it's going to be relatively weatherproof. So pretty excited to try that. So that's typically what your Hero Mesh will come in. Now to talk about the Powered by Gymalax. Once I first saw that on their Instagram and leaked pictures and whatnot, I was very confused and kind of, I guess you could say, upset about it because in the past, Gymalax has not been the best with actually creating consistent pieces of mesh per batch. I'm sure many of you guys who order a bunch of string stuff from them like I used to, you get their soft mesh 1 week, you get it, it's super soft and it's the perfect mesh. Then you order 2 weeks later and it's, you know, maybe it's harder, the diamonds might seem to be a bit bigger. It's not as soft as the first original pieces, so it creates for inconsistent pockets. And same with their hard mesh. I actually did an experiment where I work at a store. I got a piece of hard mesh from my store and then went 5-10 minutes away to a store I used to work at, got a piece of hard mesh, and I stretched them out about the same as I could, and looked at the diamonds, and the diamond sizes were slightly different and still noticeable. One were actually somewhat diamond shaped, one were actually D-shaped, and I confirmed with both of them that they came from Gymalax, so really threw me off. And after seeing that, I was kind of confused as to why East Coast guys would pick them to choose or to make their mesh or power their mesh. So I don't know. We'll see how that goes. I'm going to use this batch, and I'll probably order some from them once it releases to kind of look more in depth at the different batches and see if it's consistent or if it's completely different, or at least different enough to where I notice it. I'm a pretty big mesh nerd. I work at a lacrosse store, obviously, like I said, and I'm sure many of you guys know. So whenever we get mesh from new people or new companies, they usually ask me to check it out, and I do a bunch of different kind of tests right there in the store to kind of see if it's something worthwhile of testing. Otherwise, I just say, you know, I don't think so. Let's do something with it, send it back, give it away, whatever. So basically, the first test that I do, and this is ECD Hero Mesh, is a stretch test and a shrink test. So basically all I do is take the mesh, I stretch it out like this, about as hard as I can, and then I release the tension and see how much it shrinks. All mesh does shrink a small amount in your hands, but basically, you know, looking at this stuff, it doesn't shrink a whole lot, which is definitely a good thing. The reason I do that is because when you string a pocket and you pound the pocket, you get it to be the perfect placement and the perfect, I guess, look and design that you really desire. If you get a mesh that's going to shrink after you stretch it, same thing's going to happen. So it could go from being, barely legal and throws perfect to you leave it in your house overnight, or in the garage where it's a little cold, or outside during a summer tournament, and the mesh could start to shrink and change the performance. So this stuff definitely gets a solid 5 out of 5 stars for that. Another thing is the actual diamond size and how it feels. I don't want something that's too smooth. I want something that has a little bit of gritty feel to it. And I also like the diamond sizes to look consistent throughout the whole piece of mesh. So what I do is I stretch it about, where you typically would for a pocket. And you look at the diamond size. Pretty diamond sized actually, which is awesome. It looks to be pretty consistent throughout the whole piece of the mesh. So that's going to be awesome. The actual texture of the mesh has a bit of roughness to it, but not a whole lot. I really like to go through and analyze a whole bunch of different pieces and sides with it and kind of look through and see how it works. So far it looks pretty good. Then another thing I do is I take it, find one of these little straight ones, and I stretch it pretty much as hard as I can to see if I can, get something to happen with it, see if it'll look like it's weakening or whatnot, but it seems to be pretty locked in well. So overall, just my first impressions of the mesh is it's super awesome. It does feel a bit thinner than String King mesh does. As you can see, it's fairly thin, but they do weigh the same amount. So I'm curious as to if if the weave itself is heavier than String King's and twisted more for heavy duty, or if it's just the material they used. So definitely look into that a bit more. But basically, overall impressions of the stuff, it's awesome. 17.5 millimeters, so it's going to work with all String King patterns. And overall, it's going to be similar to String King, but their twist on it. A lot of people say, what's the difference between this and String King? The fibers used is different than what String King does. And also, I guess, the twist of it is different. So it's going to act a little differently. Another cool thing that East Coast Dice has finally done with their performance mesh is come out with unique colorways that aren't really available to anyone else, that anyone can really do. And that's their striker mesh. So you got red, royal, and black. Pretty awesome stuff. I've always been a huge fan of the striker mesh and the looks of it. But one thing I was curious about is if the white piece of mesh is consistent with the color pieces. And just from looking at it and stretching it, it doesn't shrink as much as I thought it would, considering it has colored fibers in it, which is always good. The diamond sizes appear to be pretty much similar, which is good. So I think their color mesh, it feels a little bit softer than their white does, but that may be because when they shipped it to me, white one was the only one packaged. These ones were just loose in the box, so that could be it. So, like I said, this is part 1 of part 3. Next phase, I'm going to string up a piece and put it through a bunch of testing. String it up with the same pattern I use for my String King sticks with my Rabels. Try that out. Do like an accuracy test, weather test, things like that, using the Hero strings as well. And the third video will be a comparison with String King and Throne Light Mesh. So hopefully you guys stay tuned, but overall it really impressed me right out of the box. I'm excited to see what East Coast Dice does with this stuff. I mean, if this becomes a huge hit for them and kids love it and it has no performance problems, it might change the game, honestly, because String King's going to have to find something to step up their game and create something new, since they don't have such a huge following like East Coast Dice does. And Throne Light Mesh, I'm really excited to see what that's about. So, thank you guys for watching. Part 1 is finally over. Sorry for rambling for almost 10 minutes, but there's just so much I look at when I look at mesh and actually review it. And being someone who's so into String King mesh, it's hard for me not to give a biased review, because I've known the String King guys for years and years and whatnot. So, see ya for part 2.